So in this unit, topic 8.3, we'll now discuss solid domestic waste. So far we've been discussing resources. What we're going to discuss now in this topic, how do we get rid of and recycle waste? We refer to it as solid domestic waste, SDW. That can comprise a lot of different things. Unfortunately, as we use more and more resources in the world, we're increasing the amount of SDW. This impacts sustainability. Previously, we've thought about sustainability as using up our resources too fast, but we could also consider it as producing too much waste too fast is also a sustainability issue. So let's talk about the types of solid domestic waste, SDW, garden waste, kitchen waste, things you might compost at home, glass, wood, hard materials like that. As you can probably guess, MEDCs generate more solid W waste than LEDCs. And unfortunately, half of the world lacks very good access to places to dispose of the waste. If you go to third world countries, typically you see pictures of just piles of waste on the streets or out in the fields, unfortunately in the rivers. Or you go to less developed countries and they simply just pump out pollution waste out into the sky and so forth. Unfortunately, as the world becomes more technological, that amount of SDW is increasing because of electronic waste. That's becoming a significant part of our waste problem. Computers, phones, circuit boards. And unfortunately, we think about those just as disposable waste, but really, most electronic waste has a lot of fairly rare minerals, elements in there, like zinc, beryllium, copper, gold, tantalum, and so forth. Even solar panels have a lot of important minerals in there that are non-renewable resources. So what can we do about this? Well, the obvious thing is you could go ahead and do recycling. That increases as a result of population and living conditions. And this helps in sustainability. But even recycling has a lot of difficulties in it. We think that there are people somewhere who are just going through all our waste, taking out the elements and the parts that we need and recycle them, but not really. If you, for example, send plastic into your recycling, we have to donate energy to melting it all down and then refashioning it. And actually, the amount of energy we sometimes put into recycling things is more than the energy we can recover from those original materials. Now, sometimes we can take things and recycle them. You can take old car tires. In my day, they used to make sandals out of them. That would be pretty efficient recycling. But most of the time, it's hard to extract the minerals. It takes a lot of energy to do that. Let's go ahead and compare the types then of methods we could have for disposing of resources and the pros and cons of them. So I just mentioned recycling. Economically, I suppose it makes sense because you can recycle the elements, the minerals, and you don't have to find them again. The con, of course, is that it's very difficult to recycle a lot of things and takes a lot of energy, particularly in plastics. Composting would be a good method for recycling the garden, kitchen waste that I had mentioned before. It's biodegradable, so that's easy. As we discovered in our previous units on the atmosphere and feedback cycles, composting, of course, releases a lot of methane, and that's carbon emissions back into the sky. Landfill is probably the one we're most commonly associated with. We let the earth do its work. This takes time, of course. Plastic does not very easily recycle in landfills, but things that are biodegradable certainly would. I suppose you could also say methane release is a problem there too. And you also can have a problem if things leach out. And typically in landfills, they don't just throw it into the earth and recycle it with a bulldozer, but they probably have linings and barriers around it so it doesn't escape out or leach out. Unfortunately, incineration probably is the method of choice for most countries. We don't like to talk about it, But a lot of times the things that we think we're recycling actually probably get put on a boat, get shipped out to China, where they simply incinerate it. A lot of pollution goes back into the air, carbon emissions there. But they prefer it, and as do many LEDCs, because you can use that as energy source to generate more electricity. What are our strategies then? Well, again, getting back to our original discussion in Unit 1 on ecocentric, anthropocentric, and technocentric solutions. I suppose it depends on what your EVS is. We could simply alter human activity. Well, that'd be the easiest way. That's an ecocentric. Conservation, less consumption, easy enough. Controlling pollution with legislation. That would be an anthropocentric solution to the problem. And of course, we could find more technocentric ways, more efficient ways to reclaim elements that we normally are putting into landfills right now. There's a technocentric solution. Hey, one interesting thing I'm going to leave you with before I end topic 8.3 is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Unfortunately, an enormous amount of waste gets thrown into the ocean or gets washed down into the oceans by rivers, and it accumulates because of the tidal situation. Between Mexico and Hawaii, which is 8% of the Pacific Ocean, there is a huge, I cannot remember how many miles long it is, but there is a huge floating patch of garbage out there. Mostly it's made of plastic. Now, plastics do not biodegrade, and what happens with the tides and the movement of the water is that the plastics get ground down into smaller and smaller pieces, which we would call microplastic. And unfortunately, they can get eaten by marine animals and kill them. They also destroy their habitats, and they cause pieces to get tangled up in nets and so forth, causing a lot of destruction to marine wildlife.